Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to another Dirtbike magazine video. Ron did a little story on Italians' influence in the motocross world over the years, and we figured what the heck, let's turn it into a video. So let's get into this. Between Ducati's entry in the motocross world and Fantic's arrival in the US, it's become clear we have to brush up on our Italian. Italy has always been a major player in the dirt bike world, but for various reasons. They haven't always been imported to the US in very large numbers. In the 54 years that dirt bike has been testing motorcycles, there have been dozens of Italian brands that we've seen, ridden, or just heard rumors of. There are two things that all have in common. First, they are all beautifully crafted, and second, they have very complicated histories full of infighting and financial squabbles. Here are some of the more memorable Italian jobs that have appeared in the pages of Dirtbike. Ermacchi has a complicated history. This was an Italian aircraft company on the shores of Lake Varesay that made Italy's greatest fighters in World War II. The company started making small displacement two-strokes after the war and was eventually bought by AMF Harley-Davidson. The thinking was that it would help Harley compete against the Japanese bikes of the day. The Harley Baja 100 was most famous for giving Larry Rossler his start. In stock form, it wasn't that great. Dirtbike magazine called it a rehashed Italian street bike with no redeeming traits. The Harley. For a short time, Harley-Davidson was deeply involved in off-road racing. Larry Rossler and Bob Rutten won several desert races, including the Baja 500. In motocross, Marty Tripes and Rex Staten rode for the factory Harley team. In 1978, Harley-Davidson MX250 was a one-year model, came out of the Ermacchi factory before the Italian Harley chapter ended. Claudio and Gianfranco Castiglione had a massive effect on the motorcycle industry that is felt today. In the 80s, they acquired the Ermacchi Harley-Davidson factory in Varesay and started their own brand. They named it Cagiva as a composite of their family name and the town of Varesay. In 1987, they acquired Husqvarna. Shortly afterward, they also took control of Ducati and MV Agusta. The company always seemed to struggle, but bounced back from disaster time after time. Italjet is a scooter company that was a pioneer in the mini-cycle world. Many famous motocross riders of the 90s got their start racing Italjet two-strokes. Today, Italjet still makes scooters, but clearly inspired companies like Cobra. Now a name you might be familiar with, SWM. SWM was a company in Milan that had considerable success in trials and off-road racing. The original company ceased production in 1984, but was resurrected 30 years later with financial backing from Chinese conglomerate Shinrei. Today, some SWM motorcycles are manufactured at the former Husqvarna factory near Varesay, while others are made in China. Kramer was an Italian motorcycle company that used Austrian Rotax motors in the 70s. At some point, they were rebranded with the name Kramit. That didn't play well in English-speaking countries. For many years, Italy's biggest motorcycle manufacturer was Aprilia. The company's mainstay was small displacement two-stroke street bikes, which were effectively banned in America back in the 80s. Aprilia was making the adventure bikes before we called them adventure bikes. The 600 Wind was a bike that US riders didn't understand in 1990. We would eat it up today. LEM was another Italian company that set the stage for many racers of today. They used Franco Marini two-stroke motors and were quite successful in the late 90s. An Italian KTM? That was how the Austrian company first got involved with minis. KTM decided it was easier to rebadge LEMs than it was to make their own 50cc bikes. The KTM LEM had spectacular success in US racing with Mike Alessi. By 1996, KTM decided to build its own minis. And another brand you've heard of, TM. TM Moto goes back to 1977, but didn't have an official US importer until the 90s. The company started off in the karting world and transitioned into off-road. Back then, the ISDE had a class for full-size 80cc bikes, and TM dominated the field. Part of the Husky legacy. When Cagiva purchased Husqvarna from Electrolux in 1987, the only model that was retained was the 510cc four-stroke. Over the years, that bike evolved, and before long, it had only a hint of the original Swedish design. Overall, the four-stroke was the best motorcycle to carry the Husqvarna name in the 90s. Another Husqvarna. By 2000, Husqvarna had joined the crowd of manufacturers that rebadged LEM minis with the Franco Marini motor. At the time, Husqvarna had a number of impressive R&D projects in the back room, but was struggling to keep the front door open. Another brand you might have heard of, Polini. Polini started off making hop-up kits for scooters. Eventually, they started making their own motors, and that led to an explosion of pocket bikes, which were miniature GP road racers. In the late 90s, the company also produced motocross bikes. Aprilia again. Aprilia's 500cc V-twin dual sport bike was amazingly sophisticated and wicked fast. The bike had potential, but production costs were high and some glitches were never worked out. Very few were imported to the US. Another Aprilia. In the mid-2000s, Aprilia produced the most sophisticated 450cc motocross bike ever made. The MXV 450 was a fuel-injected V-twin that weighed only 245 pounds. In 2010, Josh Choppins finished 12th in the MXGP World Championship on the Works MXV 450. Not long afterward, the project was abandoned. Another company you've heard of, Beta. For years, Beta specialized in trials bikes. That changed in the mid-2000s when the first Beta 450RR arrived. At the time, Beta purchased its motors from KTM. It was only a few years before Beta produced its own 4-stroke motor to become the biggest Italian importer of off-road bikes. The Lucky Explorer. In 1990 and 1994, Eddie O'Reilly won the Dakar Rally on a Cagiva. Or was it a Ducati? Or was it an MV Agusta? All three brands were under the same umbrella in those days. Today, MV Agusta uses the legacy to promote the LXP Orioli edition. The Vermati. Alvaro and Guido Vermati started off as the Husaberg importer and were quite successful in GP racing with Joel Smets, winning 3 championships in the 90s. It was a great bike, but financial issues kept it from reaching production. Again, the Vermati. The Vermati brothers took on partners to bring a compromised production version of their bike to the market in 1999. This one was imported by White Brothers. Alvaro and Guido Vermati broke away from the production company they founded, which was relaunched as VOR. The Vermati brothers finally reached limited production with their own bike in 2001. It was beautifully constructed. Benelli is one of the oldest motorcycle manufacturers in the world. After years of struggle, the company ceased production in 2003 and was acquired by Qianjiang Motorcycle, a large Chinese company 2 years later. Moto Barini is another iconic Italian brand that goes back almost 100 years. It was once a piece of the Cagiva conglomerate, but is now owned by Zhongmeng Vehicle Group. Like Benelli, Marini maintains a design department in Italy. So that's a little piece of Italian history and the influence on motocross and some of the bikes that have even made it US side. We hope you enjoyed this little Ron story that we pulled straight from the website. We know not everyone likes to read and would rather watch a video, so that's why we're producing videos like this. If you got a little bit more time, click the video thumbnails now. We got plenty more for you to watch. And until next time, we'll see you down the trail.